An Australian Adventure Holiday by Martin Hammonds. This is a relatively short account of a 3-week coach tour that I went on in late September, early October 1996. Every second was like an action-packed adventure in what turned out to be the holiday of a lifetime. So this, in fact, we flew from Bangkok to Sydney, and this is the first glimpse. It was quite exciting, actually. I think that's the first glimpse of Australia through the window. It was very exciting for me. And we're on a Qantas aircraft, and we were coming in over Darwin Way sort of thing. Now, this map, actually, I was very pleased when I got this, because I thought, great, but actually you can't, even if you go close up to it, you can't sort of see very much. But very roughly, I have got a point if I use my finger, very roughly, and I mean this is very, very rough, we sort of started there and came round, and then we flew across, we flew from somewhere here, it was like, a bit vague, to the middle here. Sure. But yeah, I was a bit disappointed that it didn't come out better, bigger.
So is that a photograph of a map?
Yeah, I bought it. I bought that in Sydney. I bought that.
Right.
Yeah. So we're flying the largest freestanding, or tallest I should say, freestanding building in the southern hemisphere, and I went up it. And there is a restaurant. I believe it's I didn't actually go in the restaurant, but I know there's a restaurant, and I think it's a revolving table one. But I went up there, actually. It's one of the sites. Someone said to me, someone I know, an Australian bloke who I'd met on a previous holiday, or was it someone else, said to me, you've got to sit, you must see, if nothing else, the Sydney Opera House and the Tower. So that dominates that tower. Now, without looking at my notes and so on, I can't remember off the top of my head. It's either, I think, the Anglican Cathedral or the Roman Catholic Cathedral. But I can't, I'm not that bothered really, but it's obviously a church of sorts. This is still Sydney. This is a sort of classic shot in a way. There's the Opera House, there's the bridge. Someone I know, funnily enough, they come to see, they're from the Baptist Church, and this chap's about your age, Alan, actually. And he's a little disabled, actually, and he went to Sydney a year ago, it was last February, and he climbed, because you can climb to the top of the bridge now. Yeah. And it's very interesting, actually, because apparently when you go on the climb, he said it wasn't as bad as he thought it would be, but you have to wear a non-luminous, I think they give you a coat, a cover to wear, and it's got to be, I think, an inconspicuous colour, so you don't distract people driving down below. And I think you have to take a sort of an alcohol test, whether you can walk the straight line sort of thing, and you're not under the influence of alcohol. But I'm not certain whether you could go up there when I was there. I mean, I certainly didn't, but I've an idea it's only just 8 bits. Sydney Harbour Bridge, I think, was built in the 30s, if I remember rightly. The Opera House, I think, was built in the 70s, and I believe it was a Swedish design. I mean, it's all written down this, but I'm just doing this off the cuff. But I think I'm right in saying that the guy who designed the Opera House never actually ever went in it. I may be wrong on that. But now I had, and indeed the last one, I had my back to this. And this is, that seat there, those two were at our party. That seat there, where they're sitting, which is a stone seat, is called Mrs. Macquarie's seat or something or other. And Mrs. Macquarie, may all be documented there, was an English woman who married the governor in whenever it was, so many years, quite a few years ago by the looks of it, and she was very homesick for England. She missed it a lot. And what she used to do was to come to this point, this place, I don't know about every day, but a lot, and look out, because the view reminded her of England. So this is called Mrs. Macquarie's seat, and I think it's called, the whole place, I think it's called Macquarie's Point or something like that. Here again, as I say, you flog this for all it's worth. I'm just shifting position slightly, really. There's the Opera House and the bridge. That is but if I remember right, it's a rubber tree. I could look at my notes, but at the same time I won't. It's either a rubber tree or a gum tree, I think. But quite an unusual tree name, and it escapes me. But let me point out the tower, just about visible on the left there, and the bridge, of course. The Opera House actually is barely visible. And here again, I'm still in the same place, sort of thing. I won't sound smug this, but I'm really stating the fact. Whenever I go on holiday, I'm very lucky with the weather, virtually every time. And I mean, it brightened up quite considerably after this. But you imagine being here in the rain. Not on, is it? You know. Yeah, overexposed. This is a glimpse of Double Bay. Very expensive, and this next one is as well. So even if we're not actually in Double Bay, Sydney, we're on the fringe of it. But it's obviously a very select neighbourhood. Now this, in fact, this is an island, sort of in the middle, just away from the Opera House, sort of thing, and the bridge. And I forget the name of it. It might be Val Cruz or something like that, but it's documented. Yes, we did the city tour, I think, first morning. Bondi Beach. So Bondi Beach is over there on the left, as it were. Bondi actually, I mean, particularly, but it is seedy. I'd read this, and I mean the sand is beautiful, but the surf is fantastic. But it is somewhat seedy as a place. I mean, not particularly when we were there, but I had read this, and you pick that up. It's not. It's commercial. It's been spotted by its own success. And I walked on the sands. Incidentally, there would be dangerous sharks there. I think they have a shark net. Pretty certain they have a shark net actually. But of course, this beach on Christmas Day is chock-a-block with people undergoing the festivities. Right, let's just change the reel. So we're now looking in the other direction. This was September, so what are we? Sort of, you know, the seasons are reversed there, so early spring. No, I'm glad I went, but I wouldn't want to be there in the height of the season, perhaps. This is moving, it's still Bondi, but this is moving up to the promenade. Note the graffiti. This is moving up to the promenade. It's funny, you know, when I show these to people, not only the Australian slides, but when I show things to people who have been to the place themselves, or perhaps are in Australia, living there. I mean, I showed them to one woman and her sister, the sister of the woman who lives in 2nd Avenue. This sister lives in Australia, and she told me, and I would never have known this in a million years, she said, that tree there, right in the middle of the picture, is a cypress tree, and apparently there was a whole row of them, and they all died, I think for no apparent reason. Anyway, reason or not, there was that solitary cypress tree standing up. Well, I suppose that was local news. Well, I'd never have known that in a million years, you know, if she hadn't have lived there and told me about it. Lived in Australia somewhere. Where she lived. Sort of moving up perhaps even further, so we're now on the edge of the shot. So the promenade is to the left and the sand is further to the left. Bondi. Yes. Oh yes. Very good for surfing. Bondi Beach again. And again on the promenade or thereabouts. Hardly anyone about actually. Right, we're now just around Sydney. There's the tower again. I don't know whether I took it. It's taken through the coach window. You can see the reflection. probably I took it to get the tower in, or perhaps it was just a general downtown shot. I can't remember specifically why I took it, but the tower is there. Right, there is the Opera House. Couldn't miss that shape anywhere, actually. Yeah, I'm pleased with this, actually. It's come up somewhat dark because the sun was coming towards the lens. But this is, I've seen this on the funny enough, the other day it was on the television, this shot or something similar to it. So it's a getting down on your haunches job. And this is just panning. So the previous shot, if you imagine I've turned around 180 degrees and I've got my back to the bridge, this is what you see. Note the sort of tropical looking palm trees there. And this is much the same as the earlier one, the bridge. Right, one of the principal industries of Australia is opal, the mining of opals and making things from them. And we went, you get this quite a lot the sort of holidays I go on, but normally downtown Sydney, could be anywhere really, sort of the sort of banking area, wherever. Overexposed, a street scene, McDonald's inevitably, they're everywhere actually. I always remember someone saying that in Bangkok, McDonald's is popular, I mean it's popular everywhere, but McDonald's is a useful meeting point for youngsters in Bangkok. Why? Because they've got toilets, you see. Makes sense when you think about it, because I don't know that they have public loos. So, street scene in Sydney, another Woolies, another street scene in Sydney. Note the right-hand drive, by the way, of the cars. Overexposed. I think on the left there is, I think it might be called Hyde Park. There's a particular part there over on the left, overexposed. Yeah, these are bought slides, or this is anyway. Without looking at it, I'm not quite certain exactly where it is, but suffice it to say that it is Sydney. Another bought slide. This particular bridge has got a name, so I suspect this is probably even further. When I was at showing you the island thing, and in the middle of the sort of harbour water, I think I've got this on my own shot, but further away, and I've an idea that years ago prisoners were kept there, but I think it was originally a fort. And here again we've got, that looks a bit like that circular window thing above the entrance, looks a bit like the one I took earlier actually. I could check it out, but off the top of my head I would say that's either the Anglican Cathedral or the Roman Catholic Cathedral in Sydney, which has got a saint's name I think, but to save time or whatever I won't pick it up. Yeah, this is a bought slide. The last one I think was a bought slide. This is it Bondi? It might not be Bondi. A bought slide, it might be one of the other. There's quite a lot of beaches around Sydney. Manly is a particularly fashionable one. Bondi is a bit common, I think. And this is one of the, it might be Bondi actually, but without looking at the rocks as well. So the rocks, if you imagine those views of the bridge, when we were looking down towards the bridge earlier, well the rocks is to the left, as we were looking up or down towards the bridge, the rocks is the area to the left. And it was where it all started, where the rocks, the convicts built it, you see, when they came over. But now, and it looks it there, I'm pretty certain this is part of the rocks, it's twee, it's fashionable. Reminds me a bit, you know, way these sort of riverside things, which were eyesores and slums at one time, have been developed, and they're all very trendy now, aren't they, these waterfront places? Well, the rocks is rather like that. It's rather twee, cafes and all the rest of it. Darling Harbour is a very twee, let me just check, I'm pretty certain it's Darling Harbour. You know, have your lunch outside and wine and all that. A complex of shops and restaurants and cafes and so on. It's quite smart, that Darling. And the Blue Mountains are within reach of Sydney, but you know they're a half day or a day's outing. They're not actually in Sydney. And that blue haze isn't due to the perhaps inferior quality at the slide, it's due to the eucalyptus. That's why they're called Blue Mountains. It's all eucalyptus trees, and apparently they give off this vapour which causes a blueness. But this is a standard shot with this skyway thing, and I'm Pier or Wharf 6. It really was nice here. So what we've got, the Opera House is sort of go to the end here, turn left and weave round, perhaps a quarter of an hour's walk, something like that. The bridge is behind me, sort of, you know. And this is what is called Circular Quay, and it really was a lovely, lovely day or afternoon. And this is what's called Circular Quay. These guys, Captain Cook, by the way, that's just the cruise line. And I don't know whether that was the boat we went on, but you know, it's a must-do thing to take a cruise with coffee or whatever. The various themes, you can have night cruise and so on, around the harbour. That's the way to see it, sort of thing. Well, these, I suppose they're Buddhist monks or Tibetan monks. These were on the quayside. I mean, I didn't know them from Adam, but I thought, well, it makes a nice shot. It's a little overexposed. Right. We went on the boat, I think I'm on it now actually, and somewhat dark because I'm taking it towards the sun. We went on this coffee cruise and it was fantastic, it really was. And it goes from Circular Quay, well I'm definitely on it there you see, somewhat dark because I'm, they are. I think I'm right in saying that structurally or mechanically they do nothing for the bridge. The bridge would support itself without them. They're there for decorative purposes or for looking nice purposes. I don't think they contribute anything mechanically to the bridge. I think I'm right in saying
they hold the road.
Sorry?
They hold the road.
Yeah, they hold the road, yes, which
yeah.
I suppose technically, well, I don't know what's part of the bridge or not really. But, so the rocks you see, where it all began, is over to the left there sort of thing. And there is that fort thing I mentioned earlier. So this is the opposite side to the Opera House and so on. I'm pleased with that one actually. It was getting on sort of mid to late afternoon, and the red, I think, makes all the difference, doesn't it? You know, if it would be quite bland, but the red sets it off, doesn't it? So a Sydney showboat, yes. Yeah. And this is on the same side as the Opera House, but further coming towards me, as it were. So the Opera House and the bridge are sort of down there. And I think this might be part of the Botanical Gardens, which are very famous. I didn't actually go around, we didn't have time. Now Sydney is a port. Some people forget that. So, you know, it's a working port. Very exclusive, nice property here. So the Opera House and so on is further and further down to the over there sort of thing. And these waterside properties are expensive. They've got to be, haven't they? Right on the water like that, they look it too, don't they? There's the Opera House again. There's the Sydney Tower in the background, dominant, you see. Pleased with that one. That's the bridge. There's actually on the boat, knowledgeably and correctly, I guess, and it never occurred to me that that red boat over there is a fire boat. Well, it makes sense, but it never have occurred to me. So this is still on this cruise, this harbour cruise. Right, I remember this, when you remember that shot earlier of Circular Quay, number 6, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we left there and we landed there. Now, I wanted to do the Opera House tour. And I knew and we were leaving the next day, and I knew that the last tour began at 4 o'clock, and the boat docked at 1:45 after our harbour cruise. So it was a dash round that Circular Quay, or part of it, to get there. I got there with about 5 minutes to spare, but I was sort of, trotting as it were. And it's very nice, the Opera House, because you've got, cafe, and you've got an under where you can sit there, sort of thing. See what I mean? You can sort of sit out. So the opera house is to the left, and as I say, it was a beautiful spring, really sort of summer. You can tell, sort of summer's day, although technically it wasn't summer. Now these steps that lead up to the opera house, everything happens here. It's a cult thing to go up the steps or be seen on them. People get married on them. And I noticed on the television on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, this featured large, I can't remember exactly now, but I think it was chock-a-block with people. So these steps are quite famous, you know, regardless of the actual opera themselves. Right, we did a tour. I get muddled, but this I think is part of the foyer. The opera house actually isn't just, I mean there is the main opera concert hall, but there's various other big rooms as well, sort of annex theatres, smaller theatres, but of course there is the big opera house itself. And I've got an idea that they in fact hold concerts or lunchtime concerts here in this area here. So the water is to the left, as it were, the actual harbour is to the left. And I think they hold concerts there. So we're inside, but we're not right inside, if you see what I mean. Now, you know, like the bridge, like all of these places, there's lots and lots of figures available for the number of tiles and so on. You know, there's lots of stories about the design, and I've an idea that when the tiles came loose or had to be replaced, they had to bring someone home from England especially to do them. There's all sorts of stories. This, I guess, is looking up perhaps in Singapore. I bought a postcard, and my camera, I can't get that close. It's not a macro thing, it will go out of focus. I could possibly have got a bit closer, so that is the best I could do, propped up in my hotel in Singapore. That is, I've still got the postcard. It's very impressive.
It looks impressive.
Yeah, and where we sat, where the guide talked to us, there you've got the bridge, and panning around. And again, shows you how high it is, and I don't know that that was at the very top, but it was certainly near the top. And again, it's a bit tricky on the building site going down there. Going on down there. This is now. I think this is called George Street. This is dusk, my shot, and it's a very famous, well-known street in Sydney. Perhaps a bit like Bond Street, but it's one of the streets in Sydney for shopping and so on. George Street, it's called. Now we stayed in a part of Sydney called King's Cross. Now King's Cross has a bit of a dubious reputation, prostitutes and so on, rather like King's Cross in London actually. And our hotel was a proper Art Deco place. I like it actually. But you can see the sort of place it is, you know, Club X, adult centres and so on. And this was the next morning, I think it was a Sunday morning if I remember rightly, McDonald's again. And this obviously we do all day long. Just chew bamboo and sit in the trees or whatever. They are, it's this sort of laid back life I think. And I think they can be kangaroos. Now the kangaroos here are softies. You know, they're domesticated as it were. With a jolt, there were cockatoos or birds of some variety. And again, somewhat overexposed. A very nice setting actually. So this was all, you know, in the same place. I forget what it was called now, quality pie to go on this. We were told, the guide said to us, he said, look, tomorrow or whenever, there's a tour of the Hawkesbury River. He said, this tour, and he said, I wouldn't lie to you, he said, because if I lie to you, you're going to, and it's rubbish, you're going to come back to me and go for me. He said, but this tour is, I believe he said, it is the second best tour in the whole of the southern hemisphere, not just Oz, but New Zealand, Fiji and so on. And what you do, you get on this boat. Now the Hawkesbury River, here again, beautiful weather. And I was due to meet a woman who I'd met on a previous holiday in southern Spain, Portugal, Morocco. and I still correspond with her, and I was going to meet her, but this guide said, not only to me, to us all, he said, whatever you do, he said, don't miss this tour. He said, it is a must, and I'm not just, he said, I wouldn't be doing myself any favours if I was selling you rubbish. So I said to this woman, I made an excuse. I was sorry because I'd like to have seen her again, but am I glad I went on this. So we got on the boat, I don't know if that was the boat, we got on the boat and we sailed down the Hawkesbury River. Beautiful wooded setup, both sides, beautiful blue sky, beautiful river, but it wasn't just being on the river, it was what was at the end of it sort of thing. And in Sydney, they had a few years, maybe just 2 or 3 years before I went, they'd had these forest fires. And the forest fires devastated all this land. They really did come almost up to people's back doors. I mean, it wasn't something distant, but a beautiful... And we were on this boat, and the boat is owned by the people. And it was only a small boat, it was only our party on it, their coffee, it was very private. And the boat is owned by the people whose homestead, for want of a better word, we were going to have our lunch. It was all part of the package, you see. So here we are on the river. Can you imagine being here on a dull day when it's raining? As I say, it sounds smoke, and I'm also lucky with the weather. So this is the Hawkesbury River. Now we landed on a little quay, and part of the package, the people who owned the husband and wife of yours, or was it sons, I can't remember, who owned the boat, they owned the whole package, as it were, and we went to their homestead for tea. So we got off at the landing stage, we went through this beautiful, I don't quite know what happened here, we had a beautiful, I mean it was all part of the package we paid for, but a beautiful barbecue lunch and wine and steak and help yourself on the veranda or wherever, and that gives a much better idea of what their little pad was like. So we'd had this beautiful river cruise, and the food and the whole setting was incredible, And I think the Sydney fires that I was talking about earlier, I think it came up to their shed. I think it didn't quite reach their house. It might be frightening like that, a forest fire, particularly when it literally is on your doorstep. But this was smashing. It really was. And this is their room. Always remember, little sort of personal things stick in your mind. I had to wait quite a while for this shot because the lady of the house was in the doorway talking possibly to one of the other people. Well, you can't very well ask people to move out the way in their own house, can you, So I waited patiently to get the clear through shot. But they didn't, they let us wander all over the place if we wanted to, the kitchen earlier and here, and it was absolutely beautiful. Got back on the boat again, that was the boat, which they owned, having had a smashing lunch, and as I say, it was very private. It wasn't as though we had half of the world with us, it was just our little group. And back we went to, I'd arranged to meet, when I was in southern Spain, Portugal, Morocco, where this Australian woman earlier that I had to tell a fib to go on that previous tour. There was a guy on the trip from Sydney, and he's in his 40s. Actually, he was older than he looked, and I arranged to meet him. I'd written to him, and by coincidence, his job is they don't call them traffic wardens, but that's what we would call them. And by coincidence, his area was, that particular day, was the King's Cross area where our hotel was. So he picked me up in his car, beautiful car, and he said, Martin, he said, wherever you want to go, I'll take you. I mean, what an honour, it really was. Well, I was flabbergasted, and he took me at first back to where we were. I had a similar shot earlier on in the day, or earlier on in Sydney, when it was normal daylight. Well, this is in the evening, you see. And what happened was he took me out to the Olympic site. He took me out to the site of the Olympic Games. Now, no way would I have gone there. I can't remember whether he suggested it or whether I suggested it. So we went out to the Olympic site, and this is one of the halls with the seats there. I'm not exactly certain what goes on there. That's a view looking down, as it were. I don't know what they play there, but this will be used basketball by the looks of it, a practice. So this was at night, you see, and then on the artificial pit, there was like Subutio models, but this was a proper game going on this all-weather court. So this will be used for the Olympics as well, only it's being used then. And again, this hockey order, but they're in chronological order of taking. I mean, logically, I suppose that would have been the first shot, you know. The sort of general public swimming pool, and they let me go in free because I was a tourist. He talked them into it. But this is the proper, and here again it's being used as a working pool, and this is a proper Olympic pool which will be used proper when the games are on. And those two pools were inside the Sydney International Aquatic Centre, so in other words it's used now and will be used for the games as well, of course. Mittagong. I think we're in the province of Victoria. I'm awful on this, or is it New South Wales, or is it these things muddled, but wherever. We stopped here for a last one. Beautiful setting. Beautiful setting. Beautiful setting. Oh, but I remember the name of this place, Mittagong. So we left Sydney behind just, and beautiful wooded forest type areas as well. Someone said, quick, they didn't say it to me, but I was in earshot and we all were curious, quick, come over here and look at this, look at this. And over here was there. And what it was, and it was frightening actually, there were these, about the size of my little finger, right? There were these insects standing up vertically, like worms. I don't know if they were worms, and they were hissing. They were, you know, and it was quite frightening actually. And I know they're in shot because I pointed my camera at them, but I'm blowed if I can see where they are. And I mean, you know, perhaps if I spent, I know they're there somewhere, these things, and I never really quite got to the bottom of what they were, but it was a little bit alarming. I wouldn't want to put my hand there or anything like that, the hissing. So they're there somewhere, Alan, but goodness knows where. In Australia, they have they don't call them bungalows, but they have an awful lot of bungalows as their main dwellings. And we're still in this place, Mittagong, New South Wales countryside. Could be anywhere, but I just take, you know, general countryside shots. So we're moving on with the countryside. I have got these labelled, but I'm just sort of going through them quickly. Now this is on the outskirts, if I remember rightly, of, is it Adelaide or is it Canberra? The next shot will probably, I think it's Canberra. Yeah, now Canberra, you would have never seen anything like it. Yeah, I could look this up actually. I'm pretty certain this is Canberra, which is the capital of Australia, and that building is obviously significant, but off the top of my head I don't know what it is. Yes, now then, this was quite incredible. In Canberra, it's the capital of Australia, they have got this, and you'll see it better later, they've got this new Parliament building. And this new Parliament building, you'll see it later, is set into a hill. I've never seen anything like it. And when we were there, as it happened, it was, now I can't remember now whether it was the New South Wales Children's, I think we knew these in an illogical order, but in a chronological order of taking. But this new Parliament House is enormous. Now I felt very privileged here because I can't remember now, but one of them has got green and the other house is reddish, and we were allowed into them both. Admittedly there was no scenes going on, and this is, both of these houses constitute the Australian Parliament. I can't remember now, one of them was perhaps the Senate and the other was whatever, right, is the amount of concrete used to build this place, and you'll see it later. In a sense you'll see it, it's built into a hill. could build 25 Sydney Opera houses. The new Parliament House can. This, I'll tell you what, let me just move on and come back, because otherwise it's, let me just move on and then I'll come back. Right, now this is the top of the hill. This is the top. So what you've got coming down here, you've got all green, because the building, although it's crowned with this flagpole thing, the building, and you'll get there's a better shot, perhaps the next one, is set into a hill. That gives you some idea. So all these rooms are sort of underground, under the grass, if you see what I mean.
Are they under this grass here?
Yes.
Directly in front of us?
Yes, yes, yeah,
Right.
yeah. So that, the shot where I suddenly started going forward was taken by the flagpole. So if we go back, sorry, Anzac Parade, and it's a direct straight line, and we went up there, and at the top there, now I forget the exact name of it, but this is another one, the fountain in the lake. Now I have got these labelled, I think, but the three buildings there, certainly the two, they're very important, and I forget now, but I think one of them is a technology building or something or other. Still Lake Burley Griffin, I think. Right, see, we're now going up that brown strip, we're now going up Anzac Parade, and what you've got all the way along this left and right are the war memorials. I think there was one to Australian soldiers who lost their life in Vietnam. There's me taking a photo.
It's quite interesting, so.
Yes, it is actually, isn't it? Yeah. And you see that there's the sort of the browny surface close up. I don't know what that particular memorial was. It might have been the Vietnam, Australian Vietnam memorial. I'm not certain.
Is that what's right at the very end of this?
No, it's not what's at the end. This is going up to the very end. The actual museum, the war museum, as it were, I forget the exact name of it, is at the top. So we're now going up that sort of browny road surface, and left and right, you know, and Anzac Parade, left and right are the various memorials. Right, now you see, you're looking back. Can you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Where we were with the flagpole earlier, we've now, almost said, come full circle. So we're now at the top of the parade with the war memorials a bit from the outside. So you see that in the distance from the flagpole. And this is Australian War Memorial, and this is outside. That bloke there on the right, I got on well with him. He was from Ipswich. There were only 4 English people, or was it 3 or 4 on it? And that guy on the right there, a nice chap actually, was from near Ipswich, Woodbridge in Suffolk, Derek. It's a fly or something over on my slide. So we went inside there, and I mean you could get through spools of films, so various aspects of Australian fighting over the years, and there's an aircraft section as well. And this looks like Arctic gear on the right there, how they kitted themselves out. And again, up high overlooking, that sort of thing. Well, I mean these are in the wild. Well, the guide, whoever it was, said that almost certainly the kangaroo would bolt. But he says it's high conditions. I don't know which one that is, probably on the label there, but beautiful. And the security, of course, is high with cameras and so on. That might be the Indian one. I'm not certain without looking, but that, I think it is the High Commission of India. I think I can read that from here. And the piece de resistance, it doesn't do it justice here, is the Chinese one. The Chinese one, but it really doesn't do it justice, this shot, is incredible. It really is. And, you know, when they've done travel programs of Canberra and so on with television, this is one of the things that they featured on Wish You Were Here or wherever. There is, I think that's the old, he said Opera House, the old Parliament House with the new one in the background, I think, that flagpole. That's where you can actually have lunch on them, like a cafe, an evening out sort of thing. But these yellow and green trolley buses are unique. Nice wide streets in Melbourne. Winterkill. Nice wide streets. And again, Collins Street is one of the famous streets in Melbourne. This was either before breakfast or just after, so it hadn't really woken up yet, the city. Chinatown, or the edge of Chinatown in Melbourne. Now, I met up with this ex-pupil of mine. I mean, this ex-pupil, well, I'll say more about him later when he's in shot. But I was with him, and Melbourne is beautiful. Actually, I didn't get very many of the parks and lakes. I somehow missed out on them, although I was going through them. I mean, that's something, but it is a city of parks and lakes. It's quite an elegant city. And this, I forget the name of this now, this particular, I don't forget what you call it now, but obviously, or Australian Memorial Building, whatever it's called, in Melbourne. And I was with this ex-pupil of mine, Dave. I'll tell you about Dave later, actually. You'll see him in shot. So just going back to the previous shot, there's that Rialto Tower, I think that's what it's called, on the left there. Nice city, Melbourne, actually. This is just panning around sort of Melbourne. And again, there's the tower on the right there. So there are various levels to this, and they've got sort of stone balconies, and I just, point my camera around the surrounds, as it were, Melbourne, and again. I don't really know exactly what I'm talking about. This is the Yarra River. Now the Yarra River is the river of Melbourne, and a lot of people think the Yarra River is a dirty river. Because it looks, I suppose it does in that shot, it's easy to see what you want to see, but it does actually look brown. But it isn't because it's dirty, it's just because of the way the mud or whatever it is at the bottom is coloured. It isn't a dirty river. But the Yarra River is a famous river. It's one of the places of the world for meeting. Under the clocks that show different times around the world, those steps are a meeting place, for students and so on. And also the characteristic colour, 11:10 in the morning. And in fact, Dave lives about 25 miles outside of Melbourne at a place called Berwick, and we went from Flinders Street Station to his place. Now there you are, you see they're getting ready for the parade, so people have been roped back. But it is quite incredible. They seem to talk about nothing else than this blooming game, And that I found this with Australian shot pullers. They are obsessed with sport. I mean, really obsessed with it. Those cars are parked up to a curb. Well, we crossed over, and I found on the ground, would you believe, a digital wristwatch which had one half of the strap missing. So it had half attached to one side of it, the other half was missing, and it still seemed to be going. And I never understand these blooming things, how you adjust them. I mean, I didn't anyway, but I've kept it, and I think it stopped going now, but for quite a while. I mean, it wasn't going to the right time, I don't think, because I didn't know how to adjust it. But I've often wondered, who did that belong to? Someone must have owned it. Little do they realise that it's in Gillingham, Kent, England, where they never have heard of, you know what I mean? In my filing cabinet or wherever. This Queen Victoria market is a very famous market indeed. And I've seen this on the television in travelogues when they talk about Melbourne, as it's coming up to midday. And this is in the same complex, and that is a building, I think, where years ago they used to drop molten lead down to make it go into lead shot. And that balloon thing, that too features a lot in brochures and things. So this is also, I taught him in it was my first year at Dartford. I taught him in 1965, 1966, and I remembered him actually, because I've got a good memory for names and faces, and I have a very good memory. And I taught him for a year. He was about 13, 12 perhaps, certainly 13 I think. Well, I never realised, because when we went back to his place, he got out his old reports with my comments on them. Well, in those days, subject teachers just used to write a pithy sort of, almost like a narrow strip margin comment, you know, something like, you know, has done well this term, you know, good progress so far, that sort of thing. Well, I never realised when I wrote those, and they had 3 reports a year then, I think, back in 1965-66, when I wrote those reports on his, well, anyone else's covered that, but on his in particular sort of thing, so quickly and so routinely, you know, just like a production line. I mean, I never dreamt in a million years I'd ever see the damn things again, let alone 30 odd years later on the other side of the world. It was unreal, Alan. It was unreal, but it was brilliant. It was brilliant. They're a lovely couple. I suppose they're in their early, mid-40s now, him and his wife. She works in the community as a nurse, no children. And what he does is he's got his own little business, and when I say he goes around cutting people's grass, it isn't. It's a bit posher than that, but that, I suppose, basically is what it is. And I think he does a bit of landscaping. And he calls himself the Lawn Ranger. The Lawn Ranger. I like that. It's good, isn't it? You know, I don't know whether it's lost on Australians. You know, I mean, they might say, well, the Lawn Ranger, he cuts grass, does lawns, but I don't know whether they associate it with the Lone Ranger, you know, which is the other half of the pun sort of thing. But, so he's doing very nicely. They live in a lovely sort of bungalow. They were over here in the summer, and they invited me to a couple of their get-togethers, but one was at Mepham, and I think one was somewhere else, and without a car, it was awkward for me to get to. And I was hoping I might have seen him on a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 with him and his wife, but I didn't. But they're now naturalised Australian citizens. That's him there, actually. That's his, I say bungalow, they don't call them bungalows. I mean, this was a, well, I'll say what I was going to say later. Yeah, and some of these internal shots, and at least one external one, I had prints done and sent to them. So this is inside now. Yeah, went off, the flash didn't go off. And apparently it can be absolutely sweltering here, you know, in the height of summer. Unbearably hot. I remember him telling me in a letter or card. His wife comes from Essex. That's their kitchen. Now what happened, just going back to the previous shot, I'd arranged to meet the bloke in the next shot and his partner. Now this bloke used to live, he's a year older than me, he used to live with his mum, his old mum, in 3rd Avenue. Now I knew his mum well. She died fairly recently, about a year or two ago, and she moved into a home. She was quite an aggressive, not with me she wasn't, but she was quite strong-willed and, you know, quite sort of, you know, no-nonsense type. But not with me she wasn't. I mean, but she moved into a home up in Wigmore. And when I said I was going out to Australia, I said, I'm going to meet up with Rodney, your son. Well, any mum would be thrilled to bits, wouldn't she? And she was thrilled to bits about that, you know, and because I'd arranged with Rodney, you know. And I think she thought I knew, Rodney's a year older than me, I didn't know him, I knew who he was, I didn't really know him to speak to him, and I think she thought I knew him better than I did. Anyway, the arrangement was, and talk about an adventure, this wasn't in the script, the arrangement was, I mean, my holidays are like this. When I'd finished with Anne and Dave, as it were, about tea time, I was going to go back on the train. We were 25 miles outside of Melbourne. I was going to go back on the train, not quite into Melbourne, but a station or two short of the actual centre, which is where this other guy and his partner live. And I was going to, they were going to meet me at the station, you see. Fine. So Dave ran me down to their local station. Well, the train didn't come in. So I was really, really excited. It's a real adventure. Mobile phone calls and everything to Rodney saying, look, this train hasn't turned up. So what Dave did, I mean, if it had come to the crunch, he would have taken me right in, almost into the centre of Melbourne, to this station where the guy was waiting with his partner. But in fact, he took me to an intermediate station where a train from another line came in, and I got on that. But it was tremendous. So I'd had a blooming good, been treated to a marvellous meal here, and then I met Rod and his partner. It's come out blurred, this. they treated me to a meal in a Japanese restaurant in a sort of little inner suburb of Melbourne, and the waiter took that sort of thing. But it gave me a lot of... One thing I'm pleased about, because his mum was thrilled to bits, you see. Well, the trouble was, I mean, she died, but I'm glad I was able to tell all about it. And what I did is with the church up St Paul's, I wrote an account of my holiday, the whole thing, Thailand, the lot sort of thing, everything. And I scripted it. Well, what I did is I spoke that script, and it was published in the magazine up there for them to see. Well, his mum couldn't see very well, so I used my facilities over there, my microphone, and I more or less read the script onto tape. And she heard that. And although she's died since, you know, I was pleased I got that in all right, sort of thing. She was thrilled to bits, what mother wouldn't be? Coastal scenery, certainly in Australia, dare I say it, the world. You might say, well, not much there. No, but you won't. So we're coming to what's called the Great Ocean Road, right. So we move along. I don't know whether we're on this Great Ocean Road yet, but we're moving. I forget the names of these townships. I think one is called Lorne, L-O-R-N-E. I've got them written down. Torquay is perhaps another one. But we're now, this is the Southern Ocean out here. Now, it's just beginning to get more foamy sort of thing, but very strong waters indeed. I think I think some guy was rescued, the lone yachtsman or something or other. People are always coming a cropper here sort of thing. The waters are so strong, coffee or whatever. Right, so we're still moving on. Right, this is going through a rainforest, I think. Still on or near the Great Ocean Road. The Great Ocean Road it's all documented. It's a big sort of road, coastal road. I think it was built by, was it prisoners in the First World War? Or built as a commemoration to Paul. I'd like a pound for the number of times I have seen this shot featured. I've got a postcard of it, someone sent me a postcard. I'd like a quid for the number of times I've seen this featured in brochures, television programmes. It's what's called the 12 Apostles. Now there may have been 12 originally of these projections, but there certainly aren't 12 now. And they were originally part of the main sort of coastal strip. They've broken away over the years. Now, that's another shot. But be warned, these waters are killers. Make no mistake about it. It's deceiving. You'll see this in a moment, actually. It is deceiving because this is shipwreck country. These are shipwreck waters, not least in the days of the wooden ships. And a vessel wouldn't stand a chance. It looks so peaceful, particularly on a day like this, it looks so peaceful, but they're violent. There's a certain awesome beauty about it, I must admit. This is a little bit sort of inland, but there are better shots coming up. Two more of the 12 apostles. As I say, if there were 12 in the first place, there aren't 12 now. So that I've now turned 180 degrees around from where the other projections were. Now there's a very sad story here, because what happened was, and here again, because I can't remember the exact detail, I can remember sort of bare bones of it, it loses something in the translation, as it were, but a very sad shipwreck happened here in the 1700s or 1800s or whatever. A ship had set sail, I believe it was either built or set sail from Gravesend, coincidentally enough. And it had travelled round the world, this wooden ship with its crew. And it was almost home. It has almost reached land. And it got caught up here or hereabouts. Not actually in the gorge itself, but out in the ocean there. It was almost within touching distance of Journey's End, and it was smashed to smithereens. And 2 people survived. It's almost like a novel, this, and the 2 people were the cabin boy and a young woman or girl passenger. You know, it's almost like a romance, Mills and Boon, this. And these 2 managed to get in, everyone else perished, these 2 managed to get into this quarry, or whatever it's called. And here again it sounds like a novel. They found shelter in a cave, and they lived. All the others perished. And there's a little cemetery, I didn't actually see this, but up here somewhere there's a cemetery where the people who perished are buried. Now, the way I'm telling it, you know, it's nowhere near as poignant as when you read it properly in print, sort of thing. But it is so misleading. These waters, it's so deceitful, but they are vicious. They really are. They're boiling, they're foaming. And that, I guess, is the quarry or whatever. This is sort of looking back up from a different angle. I mean, this is going on all the time. And you wouldn't, I mean, it looks deceitful, doesn't it? But you wouldn't stand a chance. And when I say you, I mean a person obviously wouldn't, but a ship wouldn't stand a chance. It'd be smashed to smithereens. But here again, you see, I was so lucky with the weather. Our guide said that the previous week he'd taken a group, because it's a standard thing, this, and it was chucking it down with rain. Well, I mean, it's not the same, Alan, is it? You know, you want to see this for the contrast, the whites and the blues, in the glorious weather that I had. So you've got these formations. This is also on the Great Ocean Road. You've got these formations all the way along, as it were. There, I got someone to take this, complete stranger. And you know, I was nearly knocked off my feet. The water, all right, I know I'm virtually out of the water, but it is such a powerful southern ocean that even in the real shallows there, I was almost knocked off my feet. I was a bit worried actually. I thought, well, you know, purse. So I didn't. Obviously, Campbell's guy was taking it, but I thought, you know, get knocked over, you get wet, your money gets wet, whatever. And it really was. It was. I was nearly knocked off my feet. That's not an exaggeration. Now, this is part of the complex, and this is called London Bridge. And I was talking, this woman I was talking about earlier, this Australian sister who came over to stay with her sister in Second Avenue, she said that she remembered, she walked across that gap before it disintegrated, sort of thing. She'd actually been on the gap. And apparently there were some people on it when it sort of fell away. Well, there you've got the gap, and that sort of rock formation complex is called London Bridge. This is Port Fairy, I think. This is virtually that at a certain time of the year, and it wasn't when we were there, the waters of this lake go, it's something to do with the rock formations, and it only happens, it wasn't when we were there, it wasn't due to happen, but it goes blue or something or other. It turns a blue colour, which it normally isn't. It's something like that. And it's what really has made Gambia famous, and again. But we knew it wouldn't happen when we were there for all time of the year. This was a place called or was it? Was this Kingston? Anyway, Lady Nelson Park, Tourist Information Centre. Bit blurred. This is a place called Kingston, which, would you believe, is famous for its lobsters. This was a stop. Larry the lobster on the other side of the road. A shot of him. That was our coach, or one of our coaches. Yeah, I've an idea, looks as though someone's died on the left there. I've an idea that this was a peninsula which was famous for its birds, bird life. Hey, there's a fly there. is a German, in inverted commas I suppose I should say, German village on the outskirts of Adelaide called Harndorf, and it was raining here, but it's all sort of German influence, buildings and so on. And we looked around. Outskirts of Adelaide, nothing in particular except to say, you know, this is Adelaide or part of Adelaide. I mean, otherwise, Adelaide cricket ground perhaps, certainly a cricket ground, and certainly Adelaide I think. Taken after the last shot. Adelaide cricket ground or wherever, I don't know what I'm talking about. But when I take, perhaps this isn't a particularly good example, and there are people in there at random, not people you know, not people who pose, people who in a sense you don't know are there. And you think, I mean that woman for example, who is she? What's she doing there? Little does she dream, would she ever dream in 1,000, million years that she's being talked about at this very moment on the other side of the world. Yeah. And I think how many shots have I wandered into? Yeah. Accident. It's all very well when you're posing, but how many shots am I in as the background, or incidentally? You know, how many screens or hand viewers am I making an appearance in all over the world? That sort of fatalism fascinates me actually. Anyway, right now we were it was taken on a completely different dimension holiday now. By the way, going off on a bit of a tangent, Melbourne. They say that's the city where you can experience all 4 seasons in one day. We're now moving up to, which is right in the centre of Australia, Alice Springs. It's the geographical centre, and it's famous for the book Alice Springs, A Town Like Alice. And here again, the weather was beautiful. And I think that's part of the McConnell mountain range. It's all right. It's a poor shot in a way, but Aboriginals, they're not like the Maoris in New Zealand who are integrated in society. The Aboriginals are very much sort of almost outcasts on the fringes of society, and they can be. They don't like being photographed. And I thought to myself, well, I don't know what, if any, opportunities I'm going to take to photograph Aboriginals. So I thought, well, you know, a bit like we were saying just now, get a shot in, so at least you've got something where you can say, look, there's Aboriginals, the original natives of Australia. This is the tower at the top there, that white tower, left of centre of the picture, is the Anzac Memorial, and that overlooks Alice Springs. So we're now up. If we're not actually up at the memorial, we're not far off it, overlooking Alice Springs, or Alice as it's called. Funny enough, I was talking about Alice Springs to someone, I mean, I've never talked about Alice Springs from one month to the next, but I was talking about it, funny enough, today, to someone I met down the high street. I think his father had been there. Anyway, this is, I'm panning around, you see, that's part of the McConnell mountain range, I think. Here again, the weather was just right. It wasn't overpoweringly hot. And there is the actual Anzac War Memorial itself. Right, we went in. I thought if I see another didgeridoo, I'll go mad. You know what I mean? You become sick of didgeridoos after a while. But the Anzac Memorial is. This is a particular Aboriginal craft shop, and these are genuine artefacts. Didgeridoos, boomerangs, paintings. To the right of the flowers, yeah. I got at Alice. I didn't actually get it at this place. I'm pretty certain I didn't. There we've got Todd Mall. Now, the next shot, if I remember rightly, is the next shot is more or less where that woman is standing on the left there, with the black top, with the purple top and the black dress, and the. That is a big shopping mall. Our hotel was sort of, the road that's leading up to Todd Mall was sort of up here, as it were. So that is more or less where that woman was standing. So I've sort of got my back to the mall, and you can see these sails are for protection from the sun. So this is well into Todd Mall, but I'd come out of that sort of Pentagon place, if you like, and I'm heading back now towards, you know, where that woman was standing. Sort of went inside, you know, and there was a video and part of the museum, obviously, is the way it was. I mean, it's all come on a lot since then, a bit old-fashioned lot, and I really mean this, is Aboriginals, I mean, putting it in our sort of sophisticated, if you like, Western terms, sitting around, lounging about under trees all day doing nothing. I mean, that would be the sort of perception. Now, I wanted to photograph them, but I didn't want them to know because they might have turned nasty. So I was making out, or trying to make out, that I was, you know, trying to photograph the background was really what I wanted. Really, it was them, you see. There's a very big drink problem. As I say, it's completely unlike the Maoris in New Zealand with Aboriginals, who, after all said and done, are the people who started it all off. There's a very big drink problem, and I think it's an embarrassment to the government in many ways. So there they are, typically sitting under trees. And Alice Springs is one of the I mean, you get what I call Europeanised, sanitised sort of Aboriginals. But they're the real, it sounds patronising, but they're the real McCoy, you know. And this is part of the hotel-motel complex, you know, swimming pool or swimming pools and that sort of thing. We had, this was quite incredible, we paid extra for this, an evening out, a night under the stars in the outback. And we were driven out in a jeep, right into the middle of nowhere, and one of the things, there was a little sort of partnership there, father and son, whoever, sort of organised it, and there we were right in the outback, or in the middle of nowhere, and one of the things, it was getting dark, was to have a boomerang demonstration. There's the boomerang in the air, and that's yours truly, that's me, I think.
Did you get it to come back?
No, no. As someone said, what happens if you want to, if you're an expert, you want to throw a boomerang away, you want to get rid of it, you know, like a log of wood. It's a bit tricky.
Give it to you, Martin.
But I just did it to say I'd done it, sort of thing. But, I don't know if that's your dad's hat. I've got one of my own now, but he's got a sun hat, and I borrowed it on at least one of my holidays, and I've got an idea. You recognise it, Alan? I've got an idea that might be the way.
Yeah.
Now we all sat. I mean, this was incredible. We all sat down, and we were told, and there were two or three guys, and one of them, I don't think it was that one, he told us all about Australian folklore and everything, and it really was interesting. And you see, it was all atmospheric, lanterns in the trees, homemade bread or whatever under the stars. I mean, this was really Australia. And one thing he told me, and I tell you this, I've never been one for stargazing. To me, I can pick out the sun, the moon, the pole star, that's about it. I can never see formations, I don't know what these various stars are. But I really was quite captivated in the southern hemisphere because the sky is so clear. I'm waxing lyrical now. I mean, it doesn't mean a thing to me in the northern hemisphere. And he was pointing out the various stars, and it came to life for me. I was sitting there with my mouth open, you know, I was really interested in it. And there, I think, is the bread being made. And I think this is what he was illustrating, the star formations or the customs or something or other, or the folklore things or whatever. And there we are, not me of course, I mean I was sitting there eating, but obviously I was taking the photo at the time. That's the chap from near Ipswich and his wife. And that's where the bread, I think, was being made or whatever. And they're putting out the, perhaps they're making the bread there, but it was a fantastic atmospheric evening. And then we had the old music. There's Derek. He was an extrovert, old Derek, on the right there from Suffolk. And you know, I thought, right, I mean, that could be a light bulb in a room. I think that might be Pluto, but my intention was to get the... Tell you about Ayers Rock, actually. Here again, well, perhaps we'll get a bit closer to it. But this huge monolith, we'll say something about it now, in the middle of nowhere. And they had a programme on Channel 4, was it, a few months back, saying how they thought it had originated. But the Aboriginals regard it as a sacred site. And the Aboriginals, there's a word, when you're talking about Aboriginal mythology and folklore, the key word that crops up time and time again is dream time. Dream time. And what dream time is, I can't quite, I wish I had a dictionary definition, as it were, but it's in the Aboriginal psyche, it's in the Aboriginal spirit, and it goes back to when the world was created, and how the spirit, their spirit, and the spirits of their ancestors are all bound up with the elements and the earth. And this dream folklore superstition that the Aboriginals attach to this is sort of unbelievable, as it were. And we're getting closer to it. I forget the dimensions actually, but was it 2 miles around the base, a mile high or something or other? We're getting closer to it. Now part of the rock is called the brain. I'm not sure whether that is, for obvious reasons, because it's like a brain in the way the rocks are covered up. I'm not sure whether that is it. And we're almost up against it now. Here again, you see, with the weather, the blue and the brown, it's quite a contrast. Bottom, isn't it? Deep blue sky and the brown sandstone. Here again, we're right up to the rock. That might be the brain. It really is awesome. Dominates the landscape. Now then, can you see the people climbing it?
Yeah.
Now, what the Aboriginals liken it to, and I've seen this quoted quite a bit in books, is people climbing the rock are likened to ants. They look like ants in a way. And this climbing, or attempting to climb, is constant. I mean, you can't climb at night. The rangers would stop that. And I think there are other limitations, weather-wise or certainly night time. But there's nothing to stop an individual. I mean, they might be almost dying. But if they want to climb the rock, I don't think they can be, or try to climb it, foolhardy though it would be, that I don't think they can actually be stopped. Any more than you could stop a guy with a heart condition going out for a jog. I suppose if he wants a free country. I mean, see what I mean? It's that sort of thing. And this is constant, day and night, this climbing. Now then, this is, well, I set myself an interesting shot. At the bottom there's a notice advising people not to climb if you have any doubts about your health. Don't even think about it. You know, it's very tempting, this macho thing, oh yeah, I'm climbing. You know, it's almost a virility challenge to some people. But it does say on the notice, you know, in more formal language, don't be silly. Not only heart condition, if you're breathless or anything like that, asthmatic or whatever, don't climb the rock. Don't even try it, tempting though it is. Now, if you look there at the bottom, you can see about, talking in terms of the actual picture length on the screen, there's another mountain range called the Olgas. The coach park is down there. That sort of thing looks almost on stilts, to almost in the southeast corner of the picture. That is, they call, the Australians got these delightful words, that barbecues are barbies. Outside loser dunnies, you know, they're very fond of this way of talking. Whereas a dunny, they don't really like it. The dunny there. Well, you see, I'm only a little way up the rock. I'm possibly still on Chicken Rock there. The chain. So Chicken Rock is sort of the boulder, the bumpy bit, sort of almost in front of that kid sort of thing. Then there's a gap. Then the chain starts. Now, but you see all these intrepid people there climbing up. The guy there in the blue top with the green hat on the left there, he was a sort of fourth English person in the group, but he came from the Cayman Islands, although he was English. The girl behind my shoulder, as it were, with the sunglasses and the grey top, she was lovely actually. She was American. I don't know whether she was sort of Taiwanese American or something or other, but she was an actress. Lovely girl actually, and she had a lovely pair. I still write to them. They live in California, and I still swap Christmas cards. And her father was a cable car operator in San Francisco. But you see, people, this climb, the little boy there, it's relentless. This attempting to climb the rock. Now I'll come back to the climbing aspect later. We're now sort of down at base now. If I remember rightly, we sort of sampled it on the afternoon, and I know I certainly went back the next morning. Those who want to climb, the guide said, don't kid yourselves, those who really want to climb will go the next morning. Well, I said yeah, but I don't think I really thought that I would climb to the top. But I thought I'll go so far. I'll go so far. Just panning around the rock again. We're still on the previous afternoon, I think. Yeah, we're now back in the coach, I think, and those are the Olgas. And I think we were heading towards the Olgas. This is another rock formation. In some ways, more impressive than Ayers Rock. And I think they're about 6 miles away, 5 miles away. I've forgotten now, actually. I mean, you can walk your blooming socks off, quite frankly. And I walked into the gap so far, I think. So we're now at the Olgas. And I think, yeah, we're still at the Olgas, I think. So it's still that red sandstone. That is the classic shot of the Olgas. I'd like a quid for the number of times I've seen that shot in books and so on. That is the standard shot. Here again, I'm going through these rather superficially, but there's quite a history about it. How's it going? You stop talking about that?
Yes, nice.
That is a classic shot. I'm very pleased with that one. I'll say a bit more about the mystique of Ayers Rock. One of the things, I haven't mentioned this so far, but it's sort of coming up now, is that the colour of the rock changes according to the day. And the two times, well, I suppose the two extreme times to see it are sunset and sunrise. And it takes on different colours during the day. Not just morning and evening, but during the day. And they reckon, well, they, in inverted commas, reckon, that if you look at the rock long enough, it breathes. It moves, it breathes. Now, all right, this is all wrapped up with folklore and all the rest of it. This mystique, this Aboriginal mystique.
Do you know anything about how it was formed?
Well, good question, Alan. I may have it documented. I can't trot it off now.
No.
But they reckon, I think, that I don't want to quote the wrong fraction, but is it only a fifth of it is above the surface or something or other? But this Channel 4 programme, and I must admit not much of it sunk in to my retaining memory, but this Channel 4 programme did in fact go through how it all happened, I think. Came up, looks like a cigarette pack or something there. While we were eating, I suppose he was on the couch, he came up to see what we were eating. So this is at one of the sites watching Ayers Rock. Now you see it's getting darker, and the rock's getting darker. Darker still, perhaps. Must be getting darker still chronologically, unless it's suddenly got light again. And I suppose Ayers Rock is there somewhere, and it's virtually dark. Right, the next day, I think. There's the dummy. Now you can see what it is. Now what I found was this. It's slippery. It's slippery. Now when you think about it, your instinct is to stand vertical, isn't it? It's to stand vertical. Now that means on a surface like that, your feet are at an angle. They're pointing down or up, not at right angles like I am now on the flat. So consequently, and I found this too, you're standing there on a slippery surface with your feet at the wrong angle. It is blowing too. It is windy there. It is windy. You're on a slippery surface, it's windy. And also the height. Now that, I mean, we've hardly left the ground, that's nothing. But you get an appreciation of the height there, Alan, don't you? You see what I mean? You know, and yet we're barely off the ground, you see. And it is quite, I found it quite sort of, I'm sort of not too cocksure about this sort of thing. And we were told, if you're, you see, over the years, quite a few people have died on the rock. Not necessarily through heart attack, I mean, I suppose people have, but through being blown off the rock. And we were told, if your sun hat goes, or the lens cap of the camera goes, leave it. Don't try and retrieve it. It could cost you your life. It could cost you your life. Now you see the chain, you see what I mean? It's better than nothing.
It's quite thick.
Yeah, quite thick, but because it's swinging.
Yeah.
It's swinging. And also, you sort of overtake people on it. Two of our party, I think it was two, did in fact climb to the top. They did in fact climb to the top. And I believe there's a book that you can sign at the top. And this is a view from, there's the Alders in the distance, so I'm so far up the rock. And there are caves at the bottom of the rock. Now in actual fact this was pitch black, but the flash lit it up, this cave at the bottom of the rock. And coming down, I found that was somehow going up, you're against gravity, coming down, it's as though you're being pulled down, and I, certainly quite a bit of the way, came down deliberately on my backside, you know. Particularly perhaps when we left the chain, you know, because you've got to get to Chicken Rock from the chain, there's a gap. And you know, you're standing there as large as like on a slippery surface, the wind blowing and that, you know, and somehow if you're on your backside, you can't fall any further sort of thing. And that is the outside of that cave, I think. And we walked, we didn't go completely round the rock, but we were taken for a walk along the base of the rock. Now those are the names of people who have perished on the rock. And I mean, there are probably more. And I'm not certain that they were all in that one spot anyway. And my memory is, the ones I looked at, it seemed to me that they were all people who had died on the rock in the 1970s. They didn't seem any up-to-date ones. But that's not to say that people haven't died subsequently. And this was some cockatoo or something around me again at the base of the rock. Right, we went for a walk part way round the bottom of the rock, and there are various caves, and that one I think has got Aboriginal paintings on it. And that is an Aboriginal painting, presumably in that last shot cave. And you know, you've got all these sort of, I mean, things grow on the rock. There you've got the trees and that. And all these sort of, all these weird sort of indentations, caves, call them what you will. That's the brain. There's also what they call a mini Ayers rock. There's a mini Ayers rock, I think. Now there are certain, I don't know whether, let's move on to the next shot. There are certain caves where women aren't allowed. It's men's, and there are certain women's caves where men aren't allowed. And in these so-called men's caves, I don't know whether this is one of them, but they're there anyway, women aren't allowed. And young boys, you know, when they reach puberty, are initiated. They're circumcised, actually, that's what it is. And it's all very male and secret and all the rest of it. And it's all part of the Aboriginal folklore. And circumcision is what happens to boys when they reach puberty. And women too, they've got their own caves. Right, we then move to this Aboriginal centre near the rock. Unfortunately, you weren't allowed to take photos inside it. but you could take them outside. So this was all Aboriginal artefacts and so on near Ayers Rock. This is a board slide. They're all done up to the nines, aren't they? It's called a Corrigiby or something or other. I've got it written down, but it's an Aboriginal ceremonial to Cairns, which is in the tropics. This is on the east side of Australia, but further up. That was a palatial blooming place. They've altered the name of it now. It was, when I was there, it was called the Cairns Colonial Club. They've renamed it slightly. And one of the I beg your pardon, eating places, we had breakfast there, was near this pool, but really luxurious, you know. And this is reception. So Cairns is in the tropics. Cairns Colonial Club Resort. It was a resort. I don't know, sort of a beach there and pools where you could swim up to the bar and you know, marvellous accommodation and eating. Then went out to the Barrier Reef. Now here again I was so lucky with the weather. The Great Barrier Reef, which is a national park, and this is the landing stage to get on the catamaran, I think it was, whatever it's called, to take us out to the reef. And it was a beautiful day, it really was. So this is at Cairns. You get on the catamaran, what it's called, at Cairns, and out you go. And they say that Cairns is the gateway to the Barrier Reef. And that is what we were on, that or something like that. I think they're catamarans. Yeah. Anyway, there's a semi-submersible sub. Say more about that later, which enables you to see underwater. But we're still at the landing stage. That dome building in the background, that sort of black dome building, I think is the casino. So we haven't yet actually set sail yet, but we're about to. So I don't even know technically whether we've set sail now. I might just be panning around. I think we're on this is what it was a very lovely sunny day, but it's come out dark because I was taken towards the sun. But that, if I've got this right, is what's called Green Island. Now Green Island is one of the places on the reef that one visits. There are various places. And Green Island is reached by a sort of a causeway, or a pier. You get off at the pier. And there's an observation thing, sort of half or under the water, where that flag is, I think, on the left. And then when you've done that, you walk up towards the landing stage. Green Island is a sort of commercial little island with shops and everything on it, you know. But it's one of the islands in the Great Barrier Reef. And on that sort of complex on the left there is this underwater observation place. Now that is another catamaran, I think. Just going back to that shot, beautifully blue coral waters. That doesn't really do it justice. And it's a bit, you know, actually it was beautiful. It doesn't do it justice on the film, but when we got to the pier, we went down and look through the observation glass, and you've got all sorts of things, corals. It looks misty on the film, but it looks much better, very impressive when you see it with the naked eye, as it were. And you've got fish and corals and all the rest of it. And again, I mean, that looks dull, but in actual fact it's tremendously impressive. And again. And we're now at the sort of sea end of the causeway, and that's one of the beaches, I think. So when you walk round there to the left, you actually obviously get onto the island itself. And that is a semi-submersible sub. I think that's taken from did I say causeway? I think it's a pier, whatever it's called, the walk along bit. And that is a semi-submersible sub, I think. And this is, it's really tropical paradise, isn't it, really? And this is the beach, or one of the beaches, beautiful waters of the reef. So we've landed now. And we went on a nature walk. We went on a nature walk. So this is at the sort of top of the beach. One of the beaches. And this is part of the sort of the complex, the shops and all the rest of it. Right. Suppose you go down to the water's edge, where there are crocodiles around. You go down the water's edge. If you go on a particular day, then if you go the next day, make absolutely certain that you don't go to the same place at the same time as the day you went before. Because if a crocodile had spotted you on the first day, he will have logged it, and the next day he will be waiting for you. That is how intelligent they are. And they do say that if you're chased by a saltwater croc, and they are killers, then try and zigzag, because they find it difficult. You know, they find it easy to run straight lines, but can't turn. So there you are. So I really don't know. I mean, I hope it's I hope it is a saltwater one, but I don't know. But it was in this compound, and also in this compound there were, I don't know if they were from Polynesia, but various artefacts. Pontoon, that's it. There was this pontoon moored where you went on board and had everything for eat and so on. That's the pontoon, I think they're over on the left. And we were heading for the pontoon. And from there you can go diving and you can relax on the sun deck and you can eat. So we left Green Island behind. We were heading for that pontoon. I'm pretty certain it was that one. That thing on the right there, that raft looking thing, is simply where people can, you know, sit on or whatever and watch the coral. Watch the coral. Beautifully blue waters. Now, I got muddled, but on the pontoon, there were two things that you could view, and I can't remember which one is which. I did both, but you had the choice. Well, I did both. Of going down into an observation platform, which was permanently anchored, like the one, you know, where we landed on the stage, on the pier sort of thing. And the other one was to go down in a semi-submersible sub, and I'm not certain which was which on the shot, or on the shots. It doesn't do it justice, you know. I think the glass must do something to the camera lens or something or other, because it really is extremely beautiful, but my slides don't do what is seen through the glass justice. Fish. Yeah. This was included, so we can make real pigs of ourselves by tucking in to the smorgasbord lunch. Never noticed before, at least not if I can't remember, but looking at the blue water through the boards there, I've never spotted that before. And, you know, if it was the sub first, then it's the pontoon observation one here, or it might be the other way round. A diver. No, diver perhaps too grand a word. Another guy here, gal. And from the pontoon, I suppose this really is the best way to see the reef, to do this snorkeling, whatever it's called, scuba diving, whatever. And there was a roped off area, and there was a sort of a lifeguard or lifeguards watching. And again. So they were all, and again. And the boys marked the boundaries beyond which you're not to go. So that's all from the pontoon. And that's another angle of the pontoon, as it were. And up top there is the sun deck, I think, or his sun deck. I think that's the very top of the pontoon. I've never really done it about you, Alan and Robert, but I've never been one for sitting in the sun. I mean, I do occasionally, but I've never been a sun worshipper. No. Never have been. Not really. Production scuba. binoculars, which I think I bought that very summer from Alders, was it, or something or other? Didn't use them all that much. And I still haven't really, this occasion. They're miniature binoculars.
Yeah, they seem quite easy to carry around.
Oh yes, but yeah, they're meant to go on the belt, but it's a little bit awkward somehow. They're sort of, it looks cool in a way, but they become a bit top heavy, if you know what I mean. They weigh down a bit. Another view on the pontoon. And then that's sort of, you know, below decks as it were, or undercover, going back to Cairns, I guess. Little reef shot, not mine. Glad I bought these actually, because mine didn't really do it justice. Which wasn't I mean, there were more luxurious ones, but this was my room at the Cairns Colonial Club Resort. So we're back in Cairns, and that's somewhat overexposed, but that's part of my room as well, my case. This is the Cairns Colonial Club Resort, and this is that earlier room by the pool at breakfast, was it? I think this is the same place. No, this is breakfast anyway. And over there, where behind, sort of left of centre of the picture, where it looks like window frames, there or thereabouts, wherever. Yeah, I thought this was going to be the food shop, but this is the pool, adjacent eating place perhaps, and there's a sort of a waterfall thing there, and there's a beach as well. And I think there's more than one pool. Now, this was incredible. One of the other things once you do in Cairns is take the Cairns-Coranda Railway. Now, the Cairns-Coranda Railway is a marvellous feat of 19th century engineering. It goes for about 18 miles, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's like stepping back in time, and you go through past waterfalls, you go through rainforests, over trestle bridges and things, and it's sort of Edwardian, Victorian, and it's a marvellous feat of 19th century engineering. And I believe the whole thing, the bridges, the gorges, you'll get more of it later, were all built by hand. All built by hand. I think a lot of people lost their lives during the building of it. But it's a real old worldy thing, and it's absolutely fantastic. It really was. Railway carriage. The bloke there, and the sort of second seat back with the glasses with the light shining off them with the cap, and his wife is on his left with the dark glasses. They were an American couple in our group. He came from St. Louis, Missouri. I think he was a TV repair engineer or something. A nice man actually. He was the one who took my photo in Sydney Harbour on the boat. So this is the railway's platform again. We hadn't yet taken off, as it were. Right, we're now on our way. We're now on our way, looking out. And the destination, so that's the sort of back end, or was it the front? No, it must be the back end of the train, I think. So we're going through, we haven't really reached anything spectacular yet, I don't think. We're still in the early stages. And we're heading for Coranda, which is called a village in the rainforest. Bit overexposed there. And again, so that is, I think that might be the front of the train. I asked actually, I think what it was, when I got on the train, I mean whether you sit left or right, or which side you sit is arbitrary. And I think I really was sitting on the wrong side. I did ask if I could sit in the guard's van, and the guy said, well, it's against the rules, but you can. To get better shots. Yeah. That, I think, is a trestle bridge, perhaps. I've got... Now, that is a bought slide, but that, in a way, sums it up. This blooming bridge over a gorge with a waterfall shutting it down like that. And although that's a bought slide, that, I would say, is a representative slide.
Yeah, you need that slide, don't you, really, to show...
Yes, yes. You do, don't you, really, because You know, you can't very well hang out the window and get that. Nice shot. Nice shot. And there's a sort of waterfall or something there. I think this might be called Barren Falls. And again. And we stopped at this station, Barren Gorge Station was it called. We stopped to photograph waterfalls and whatever. Now that girl, attractive girl, that girl on the left there, I wonder what she's doing now. Little realising it's being picked to pieces, you know, you know what I mean, the other side of the world sort of thing. And I think how many slides, I mean, I wasn't taking her deliberately, but how many slides am I on like that? You know, it's fate, isn't it, really? Now, Coranda, and you wouldn't think it from this shot, Coranda railway station, so we've reached Journey's End. Coranda railway station is the greenest railway station in the world. It is absolutely smothered with foliage, green stuff, plants, almost like a jungle. Can't see one in that shot. The reason is we were being hurried on. We were being hurried on. And I can't see, I really can't see one of the bottom right hand corner looks like a miserable bit of bush or something in there. But it's very, very lush green all over. It's called the greenest railway station in the world, I think. Now there's the opals again. And as I say, Coranda is called the village in the rainforest, and we are in the rainforest, right in the middle of the rainforest. I didn't go to the butterfly sanctuary, but there's one there. Feast Factory, Coranda. Very tropical here, very tropical. Yeah, I think that's, not so that's my shot or a bought. No, that's a bought shot, which is a good quality one, isn't it? Good quality one. Another bought shot, I think. I didn't see one of these, but they're around. Awful things, I think, which it's famous for. We're now on our way to an Aboriginal centre. This place I was impressed with, actually. I think we're on our way to it. Yes, I think we're on our way to this already. But, and I would only have myself to blame, but I'll get on to that a little later. So we're now, I think we're at the back of this. Forget the name of the centre, it begins with K. It's one of these awkward to pronounce words, and we're now at the back, I think, of this. Likewise, I think we're at the back. Aborigines, and there's more to come. I mean, although they're dressed as sort of native Aborigines, they would be quite Europeanised. You know, you wouldn't get these people, these rather sort of antisocial people who saw Alice Springs doing this. You know, so it's a little bit artificial. Note, by the way, in the background, the cable car. We didn't go on this, but this is world famous because what the cable cars do is they go over the rainforest. You're almost in the rain. I mean, obviously you can't go into it, else the cable car would crash, wouldn't get through the trees, but it floats just above the top of the rainforest on the left. And I've seen this advertised a lot, but we didn't actually go in it ourselves. And there you've got them all doing, I almost said the tourist business, you see, all done up to the nines there. And there's the cable car, one of the cable cars on the back line. And they're lighting a fire there by the looks of it, and the guy on the right is playing the didgeridoo, inevitably. And this, I think, this is inside the place proper, and I think this was an art display or a museum of Aboriginal things, if I remember rightly. I'm not too certain about that. And this video, I mean, obviously it's difficult to take videos when you're inside, you know, to take off a screen with a still camera. But I was really interested in this video. I was prepared not to be, but I was interested in the way the Aboriginal peoples have developed, been exploited and so on. And on the left, and it literally does float above the tops. Right, we're now out the back of the complex. And at the back here, they would show you demonstrate to you various things like making a fire, throwing a boomerang, and, you know, Aboriginal craft things. Right, now then, I'm going to make mention of the guy on the right there, because this guy probably saved my life, actually, I could have done. The guy in the red shirt, he's demonstrating to our Derek from Ipswich, boomerang throwing. And he was an Aboriginal, but I think he was, but what I call a Europeanised one. I almost said a civilised one, but you know what I mean, right? Okay. So I think this is where I could have lost my life. Now, where you saw the, I can't go back to the previous shot without putting the new magazine in, but where you saw the boomerang throwing going on, it was flat. Well, this is at the end of that flat bit, as it were, and this is the start of the rainforest. Now, over there, you can't see it really, but I thought to myself, well, I'd like just to go in that rainforest to say that I've been in a rainforest. Although I think I'd been in one anyway, but that would make sure of it. Well, when I got up, and the rainforest is sort of sheer vertical, it's like a rock face, you know, you've got the flat ground and then suddenly there's the vertical tree sort of thing, and I thought, well, I'll just have a look in. Now, when I got up to the trees, as it were, the boundary, there was a barbed wire fence, well, I say fence, going round at shin height. It wasn't up here, it was at shin height. There were no notices on it, but obviously it meant keep out. I mean, well, I didn't take any notice of that, did I? You know, teachers are like, I can't tell them anything. So I stepped over it. I had sandals on to make it worse. And all I intended to do was to paddle, and I suppose I did actually, was to paddle around inside there for a few minutes, probably not going more than about 3 or 4 yards perhaps, to say I've been in a rainforest, or this rainforest. Well, I looked round and I noticed that Aboriginal guy, I think he had a red shirt on, I noticed him going like that, come out. So I dutifully obliged, and he said to me, he said, do you know, he said, that in there, which is why the fence was there of course, in there are at least, I can't remember what number he said, it was more than one, it may have been 3, 4, perhaps 5, I can't remember, poisonous snakes. And he said, if you had have been bitten, we would have had 5 minutes to get you to hospital. I haven't frightened life out of me, that did you? You know, when I think, and I would have only had myself to blame. Yeah. I mean, it's all very well standing here telling people, you know, and sort of getting attention from it, but, you know.
It's lucky.
Yeah. So that was why I took that shot, otherwise I wouldn't have taken it, but it is the rainforest.
You've been in there now.
Yeah. I don't know whether if I stared at that picture in more detail, got up closer, I could see the little barbed wire fence. Oh yeah, I mean, I crossed over. As I say, I had sandals on as well, but even without the sandals, it would be foolhardy. And this is panning right to the previous shot, so that's rainforest as well. And yeah, Tajikapuki or something or other was the name of the place. So this is it from the outside. I mean, logically, this should have been the first shot, but chronologically, you know, before I went in, but chronologically, I took it at the end. And we're on our way back to Cairns, I think. And we had a little sort of barbecue, evening supper, last night get together or whatever there. I think it was our last night in Australia. And the eating place earlier is up the other end, I think. And that sort of waterfall thing, I think we saw that in at least one earlier shot, looking at it from the sort of top angle. And that is us at that place, eating our whatever, you know, sort of artificial sandy beach. Oh yes, this is Cairns itself. Cairns is quite the actual sort of town of Cairns. And what surprised me was, I thought, I'll have a look round the town. You get a free shuttle bus from the hotel, I think. And I thought, you know, Saturday morning it would be chock-a-block. It was deserted. Deserted. You know, stop the person sort of thing. So this is Cairns on a Saturday morning. So I'm just out across the water sort of thing. And you know, some of the earlier shots were taken inside there, I guess. Actually go over there, I don't think, but I believe there's a big casino or whatever. Well, there's the pier over there. I think might be a big market over there. So you've got all the sort of ornithological sort of bird paradise thing at the front here, or something. And this is, so all the sort of bird paradise is to the right, and the promenade's on the left, and this is sort of in between, in the back, to see my Indian Nepal slides. And I showed these to them a year or two ago, whenever it was, and they'd been to Australia, and we're going back again. And when I put this one up on the screen, the man said to his wife, and I like this something, because I know the feeling myself, it's personal, he said, hang on a minute, he said, so-and-so up there, so we stayed up there, that's where we stay, you know, and things like that. They had an extra sort of, you know, that little personal touch sort of thing. So that's on the promenade. This was an art gallery. I went inside, but I don't think I was allowed to take photos, but I certainly went round an art gallery, and I think that might be it, at Cairns. And this is a shopping complex at Cairns. Now these are, I was going back to the hotel, but if you look at the dwellings there, or maybe more on the next one, yeah, notice how they're raised off the ground. Now these are old dwellings, I think, and there are at least two reasons why they were raised off the ground. One was to stop crocodiles getting in. There aren't crocodiles at Cairns now, but there were at one time. And crocodiles can't climb. And the other thing is, of course, the ventilation helps the cooling down in the humid heat, you see. And I think there's at least one other reason as well, but if there is, I can't think what it is. Now that is, talk about, you know, the haves and have-nots in this world. I mean, you could help yourself. This was for breakfast, back at the Cairns Colonial Club Resort, and that's only part of it. You know, so there's people, you know, sort of dying in the third world with nothing. It's not fair, is it? And, you know, that was only part of what we could help ourselves to. For breakfast at the... So in a way, you know, I have been to Darwin, in that we got out of the plane at the airport while they cleaned it up, or whatever, we got back on. So this is right up north, at the airport at Darwin, and we were en route to Singapore. And these are, I'll just finish off the magazine. But we're now in Singapore. Singapore is very hot and humid all the year round. It's almost on the equator. We went to see batik printing or something or other. It was on cloth, yeah. Instructions here. Craft town. Yeah. Yes, this was a little sort of centre. Oh, we then went over into, or I took a tour into, I think this was Indonesia. I'm going to have a lot of trouble in Indonesia. I know I went from Singapore, I took two separate trips, one to Indonesia and one to Malaysia, and I think this was Indonesia. So I can say I've been to Indonesia and Malaysia. Indonesia, of course, is where they've been having a lot of hassle. Yeah. Indonesia is made up of about 13,500 islands. Yeah, I think this is a place called Johor Bahru. I'm rather muddled. I certainly went to Johor Bahru, that's a mosque. Right.
What I have described is only part of what I saw and did. There was much more. For example, whilst in Australia seeing opals and learning about their mining. Also the thrill of seeing kangaroos and emus in the wild. Suffice it to say that I returned home with over 800 slides.